Be a legendary leader. Fireground failures are leadership failures. Learn the skills to be a legendary leader in the firehouse and on the fireground. Go to firegroundcompany.com.
On today's episode of the Fireground Company podcast, we're talking about cab communication and how to get your crew locked in before you arrive on scene.
The Fireground Company podcast.
Yeah, all right. We can talk about fire departments.
All right.
What do you want to talk about, Clint?
Well, let's talk about cab communication. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay.
I have nothing else going on.
All right. This one's is one of those that's going to be different for every department because some departments have technician positions and they hold their drivers to very high standards. And you have some of those drivers that they know every street, they know every building, they know in some cases every hydrant, and they've got it on lock. You don't have to say anything to them. So I get that there's some departments out there that operate kind of like that, but there's a lot of departments too where we have younger drivers or we have a lot of movement and personnel and staffing. So there may be a driver that's unfamiliar with the area. And from the point of view of the officer, you're not just talking to the driver. You're also communicating some important things going down the road to your crew as well in the back. And there's a lot going on, right? So when you're on the way to a call as an officer, you got a lot of stuff on your mind. And sometimes it's easy to forget that you have to communicate with the other people on your rig in an effective way, right? So I think that's kind of what we're talking about here is the best way to get on the same page with your driver, to get on the same page with your crew, and to also kind of lock in your own mindset getting ready for the call. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to make or break. I think it can make or break anything, any incident you go on, EMS, fire, everything in between. It can make or break it. I think there's a few different ways to look at it too. Where one of the things is how much have you worked together before? So if it's a regular driver and you've been working with them for years, whatever, versus you're on overtime or someone's filling in or you're detailed or something like that, there's obviously there's more good if you've been working together for a while because you have some of the same language, area, better and everything else. And if it's someone you haven't worked with, you may not have, even if they're familiar with the area, they don't have necessarily the same language. You guys may communicate a little differently. And I guess another thing I noticed was if I work with someone, sometimes I am a little lax on, I guess looking up the address and getting really in the weeds about it. And what's nice is if you have both people thinking about where you're going and I'm not just on autopilot sitting there letting you drive me, because everyone can have an off day. Everyone can miss a turn. Everyone can kind of get confused about in their head, like, oh, I was thinking this building and not that building. Mm-hmm. And I realize that's a thing that you can fall into if you're really comfortable with the driver, you think they know the area real well, and you're not as, I guess, aggressive at looking up the information and everything else. I like to do it as much as possible. Sometimes I get lazy like everyone else and I don't get, into we have mapping software, whatever, you have a map book, whatever it may be, when we used to have those and relied on them. It's still good to go through the motions and get used to looking stuff up, thinking about hydrants, thinking about positioning, thinking about how you would give directions. But I've realized I get a little lax with that with people that I think know the area, and that's kind of messed me up sometimes. I realized I can't do that, especially if it's a more high stakes call. You got to be like locked in. And I think sometimes just confirming that a little, saying, hey, it's when we turn into the complex, it's going to be the the third building in, you're good. Or I'll say, like, you good with that address? Or you good? It's going to be right here, here. And just to make sure we're on the same page, I think it's kind of valuable, not really to insult the person as if they didn't know, but just to make sure we're both on the same page. Because sometimes in my head, I could be thinking about like a wrong building or address or something like that. And you say, what? And it kind of
Hmm.
shakes you, gets you back on the right path. So I think it depends how much, you've worked together, not worked together, pros and cons of both, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
What do you change if you have somebody that's completely either new to driving or detailed in and doesn't know the area? Are you just a little more thorough with that communication?
Yeah, I think you got to be ready for worst cases turn by turn.
Hmm.
I mean, that's rough, man. If you're dealing with like a turn by turn situation, but you got to be ready for that. I, there's a lot to it. I mean, we start really getting into it. There's a lot going on definitely from the officer's perspective of you're looking at the notes from the call, the information you're getting from, dispatch. And sometimes that it can be overwhelming because depending on how your department does it, maybe they give you a little bit of information about the call. Maybe they just say the call type. Maybe they almost don't say anything, and maybe you don't have additional information, or they don't say anything, and you have a whole bunch of notes on the computer sitting in front of you. And sometimes there could be there could be good information about exactly what's going on and how you need to position where, the patient is in relation to maybe the building, maybe they're in a parking lot or something. So, or the fire, like where you need to position. So sometimes all that information, filtering that and figuring out how to communicate that can be really hard. And, give at the same time, give them directions to get there. Talk about, how to position exactly once you get there, because you don't want to, you have all these things going through your head, you don't want to block other incoming units and everything else. So, I mean, it can be a lot. Like the fire we went on yesterday, I was thinking going down the road, because we had snow and everything else, I was thinking about trying not to block any access to the incident. We weren't going to be needed for water supply, so that's why I was thinking in my head, I was like, oh, there's a shopping center right there. Let's ditch in the shopping center and leave as much open as possible for everyone else, since we're actually not going to be using the fire engine. So
So let's get practical with it and talk about some specifics on, techniques you use to communicate to the driver. How can the officer and the driver communicate all of this information when, the officer's got a lot going through their mind, the driver's got a lot going through their mind? What's the best way, or a couple of tricks to use to bolster this communication?
let's start in a simple way. I mean, as simple as what side of the street. I, left and right, we can use that sometimes under stress, that there's like a translation to
Hmm.
that. Everyone's done this, right? You say left, but you think right or
Hmm.
something like that. So sometimes to minimize that, whatever, that mental, all that stress that's going on, minimize that translation in your head when you're trying to tell them left or right, my side, your side. I like to use that
Hmm.
if I can. I still use left or right, but that to me is real clear. Like, hey man, the street's coming up. It's going to be on your side, on the left. You can say the left, and it's going to be your side on the left, or my side on the right. That I think that can help really clarify things when you're under stress and you're processing so much information as far as the turn coming up, or the side of the street, if the house or the building's going to be on. So I think that's one of the real helpful things. It's an easy thing. And then you get into stuff, talking about the building. How do you tell them that? Um, Explaining stuff you've never seen before. So I guess it starts with, I think, giving them also a heads up. As you're giving them directions, if if you can kind of give them a heads up, so it doesn't, all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's right here. How do you how do you help them? I think that can relax the driver and everything else. You communicate, hey, we're coming up, man, on this street. It's going to curve to the left. All right. It's going to after it curves to the left, we're going to go a little further and then we're going to make a right, so give them that information. It's like, okay, so they're going, once they make the curve, then they know, they're like, okay, I know it's coming up now, instead of just, keep going straight and then just roads weaving or something like that. I know you were talking about your dad does, tow business and stuff like that. And he has a way that it's a simple way, but he has a great way of giving directions
Yeah, I
and stuff.
remember when I was younger, and this was before GPS, and we didn't have GPS on our phones, and I mean even before like MapQuest and stuff like that. If anybody can remember that, but my dad was a master at giving directions, and it's because of the tow industry. Telling drivers how to get places when he was a driver, trying to figure out how to get around efficiently. And when I was learning to drive and starting to drive on my own, he would give me directions on how to get places, and he would do it verbally. And one of the things that always stood out is he used landmarks. So he'd say, go to the end of our street, make a right, keep going until you see a McDonald's. Once you see that McDonald's, the next light, you're going to make a left. And that's something that stood out. And it's landmarks are easier to see going down the road, especially if
Yeah.
you're moving fast. You call out street signs, and again, if you have a driver that's unfamiliar with the area, you can say, all right, you're gonna come up, you're gonna go past Johnson Street and make a left on Delaney. I don't okay,
Yeah. Well,
I
which
don't
one's
know,
Johnson?
I don't know what those are, and like I
How
said,
close?
yeah, like street signs are small, they can be hard to see in the dark and stuff
Nighttime.
like
Yeah.
that, but a school
Mhm.
or a group of buildings or a shopping center, things like that are easy to see, and so they're really helpful to use landmarks. And a lot of times, even now on the the mapping software and stuff, you can see those things. So if you're familiar with the area, you'll know your landmarks, and you can use those pretty easily. Just remember to do that, because it's easy for somebody that knows the area. Like I said, the officer familiar with the area, you got a detailed driver and they don't know the area. It's easy to say, yeah, just go up to you know Delaney Street and whatever. But that might not mean anything to them. But you can say, go up to the school. You'll see a big school on your right, and then once you get there, start slowing up, because that's where your turn's going to be. Stuff like that. So I find landmarks are very easy to process as you're driving. So that might be a good tip. And that my dad was expert at that. He knew the area so well. He could pretty much tell you how to get somewhere without even using a single street name.
Yeah. I was thinking about like myself when I used to drive. I'd like knowing some of those landmarks. It would put me at ease. So I try and do that for the driver. Even stuff to just, sometimes if you have a longer response, I mean, we don't have a lot where we are, but every once in a while, just if you have a longer response, you turn on this road, and I feel that it puts the driver at ease even when I say something like, "Hey, there's going to be a school coming up on your side, the left side, and that's about the halfway point, and then we're going to have to make a turn, but that's halfway there."
Hmm.
Just so I don't know. I feel like that helps a little. You're like, okay, I'm at the halfway point, and then give them that next landmark that, hey, the McDonald's is coming up. It's going to be on my side. After that McDonald's, the turn, it's coming up. So just slow down a little. You're going to make a right, my side, and it's going to be after that McDonald's in a little bit. So something like that. And it's like, okay, well, I passed the school. I'm halfway. Up, here comes the McDonald's. Now it makes them feel like they're on the right track, I think is helpful to talk through that. But yeah, like you said, it's easy stuff to identify is what you want to use. I mean, hey, there's a gas station. I mean, yeah, if there's not many gas stations, if it's an area where there's none, but if there's 4 gas stations on the way, it's like,
Yeah.
what? I mean, depending on what the street's like, or it's nothing but strip shopping centers. That area, I mean, hey, it's after the strip shopping center. It doesn't help, man.
Yeah.
But if it's a McDonald's, and there's not a ton, some places have a bunch, but yeah, it's this McDonald's, the next McDonald's you hit, the next Wendy's you hit, the next whatever post office or
Yeah.
something that's easy to recognize, and it's going to depend on the area. It's going to always be a little different.
Yeah, I was working overtime not too long ago, and I was driving a tiller truck in an area that I wasn't as familiar with, and the officer did a really good job. We ran a call, it was a mutual box alarm, and it was a row of like hotel motels, and so he did a good job. He said there's going to be three hotels, and it's
Yeah,
the last of the three. It goes Days Inn, Comfort Inn, Ramada.
that helps.
It
Yes.
helps, and I
Yeah.
was like, oh, and all of a sudden I was like, I got it. So I'm
Mhm.
just going to look, and he said just like you did, it's going to be on your side. So
Yeah.
I'm flying down the road. I all of a sudden I come up and I see Days Inn. Okay, Comfort Inn or whatever it was. I happen to remember that the box was at a Ramada, but it was like three. So he could have said there's going to be a bunch of hotels, and it's going to be the last one, But when he kind of made it a landmark, it was like it was a countdown. It was like
Mhm.
boom, boom, there it is.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of brings up also, it's great if you have those landmarks, but what if you don't? And
Mhm.
that's a lot harder if you're in a residential area where it's all
Yes,
houses or
right.
something like that, and it's just streets and houses. It can get hard. I mean, one thing I've found that works well is give them a countdown.
Okay.
So if you turn into this whatever residential area, and as we talked about, if there's stuff to kind of make them feel comfortable, where you're like, hey, you're going to be on this for a bit. It's going to be
Mhm.
a little bit,
Mhm.
or we're going to be on this for about 3 miles,
Yeah.
something like that. So and if you can track that on if whatever you have some kind of app or something like that, and you say, all right, we're about 2 miles in, you got 1 mile left, however you want to count that down. But with streets, what can work real well is I like giving if I can, if I can say the street names, but like you said, sometimes they're hard to pick up on. So I can say that, but I'm not going to rely on that. So I'll say it's, whatever. It's, Maple, Oak, I don't know. Then Johnson, we're going to make it right on Johnson, whatever, But what also can help with that is, hey, I'm going to count them down. You're going to make a right, my side, uh, 3 streets coming up. So this is whatever that street is. This is one. All right, this is two. The next one, this is three. We're turning here. It kind of gives them that like, okay, okay, boom. That's an easy way. If you're not familiar with the area and everything all looks the same, just give them some kind of countdown. And I like to point it out if I can. I know they may not see what my hand's doing, but if I can, I'll actually point with my fingers like, hey, 1, 2, 3, like that. So, I mean, that's if everything's the same, that's something you can default to. So, and then I guess the next thing that kind of brings up is, once you get on the street, how do you identify which building it is,
Mhm.
which house it is? Again, landmarks are great, but um, similar types of buildings can be hard.
Mhm.
So I know a lot of times with like garden apartments, sometimes they're connected, or you think about rows of townhouses
Mhm.
on streets, they're connected. And they'll also, a lot of times, there's a break somewhere, maybe halfway down the street or whatever. So I'll sometimes say that, or I'll say, hey, it's going to be on your side. It's coming up. There's going to be a group of row houses or townhouses, whatever it may be. There's going to be a break, and there's another group, and then there's going to be another break, and then it's the third one. That's a lot for you to process. So I may load that, tell you that, but I don't expect you to remember all that. So I'll say, hey, this is the first group. All right, there's a break. All right, we're at the second group. There's a break. All right, third one in, 1, 2, 3. It's right there. So I mean, that's something you can use. Hydrants. I know we've used that before. I'm
Mhm.
like, hey, we turn on the street, man. You're gonna pass a hydrant on your side. Then there's gonna be another hydrant on my side. After we pass that hydrant, it's 4 houses up. So it's like, hey, first hydrant. Here's the hydrant, my side. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's this one. That can be, I think, helpful. I mean, I don't know. What do you?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really the whole countdown thing is it also kind of adjusts the throttle control in a sense where if you tell me we got 3 miles to go. You're going to be here for a while. I can let her rip, and we can
Yeah.
kind of go. Or if you say, hey, it's coming up, and it's like, all right, well, let's start looking for something. And then also we use for like complexes and stuff that are in shapes. One of the terms we use a lot is like U's, and I guess that's because a lot of the complexes we go to are in the
Shaped like,
shape of a
yeah.
U. But that can be useful in figuring out exactly which building it is, because it does help. I mean,
Yeah.
it's because I think one of the things officers have to remember is they're looking at the
Yeah.
map, and the driver's not. Now, this is my plea to all drivers: get better, know your area, learn, and be a helpful resource to the officer, because they've got a lot going on in their minds. So if I could say one thing, it's, as a driver, learn your area. But like you said, there are situations that come up where you may not be familiar with the area. You have a young driver, you have a detailed driver, whatever. So figuring out exactly where you're going and getting on the same page can be helpful. And actually, it helps the guys in the back too, because sometimes I've had people in the back that are like, get out of the rig, and they're like, where are we going, and so if they're privy to this whole conversation, they get a concept of where we're going to. So anyways, back to this idea of the U. I guess it could be any shape, but let's say there's
I don't know,
a,
the U works
yeah.
well. I think, that, like you said, there's a lot of buildings in our area, but I think it's kind of one of those, you know, things. Like if you have that trying to describe, it's like, well, what side is it on? Because we'll say like the bottom of the U,
Hmm.
or it's going to be the left side or the right side of the U, just to give people. It's like you said, in the back too, stretching the line or something, or on the truck jumping out, going to work, like exactly where they're going. If the fire isn't showing, some of that stuff can help. So, I mean, whatever works for your area. Um, that's what you use. But I would also say that, like I touched on this a little bit before, the information. I mean, you can kind of tell them what we're gonna do, but understand you can overload the driver with so much information.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't expect them to remember everything. I try and tell them what we're gonna do and the turns we're gonna make, but I I get that they're processing a lot too and everything else. So I'll restate some of the things as we go, like we said. So I mean, be realistic with that. Uh don't tell them the whole route and then say, "What'd you do? Why'd you turn there?" It's like, "Well, I told you." It's like, yeah, you told them at the very beginning when we started all this, man. There's a whole bunch of radio traffic going on. You're talking about other stuff, what line to pull or what you're going to do, how you're going to split your crew if you're on the truck, who's going where, who's forcing this or that, whatever. There's a lot of stuff, man. So sometimes you got to restate it at every major turn or major
Yeah.
major step.
And I think that's a good point to bring up too for the officer that we've talked about is you have to look up sometimes, because I know it's hard. There's a lot going on for an officer on the way to a call. You're doing a lot, but I think especially today with the mapping software and the computer CAD notes and all of this, you can, it's very easy to get your sight line kind of locked in on the screens in front of you, and you forget to look up and just check every once in a while, for just to check to make sure the driver's doing what they're supposed to be doing, but also that you got it right in your head and stuff, right? So you've said this before, where every once in a while you got to look out the window and look at real life instead of the map, and check in every once in a while, maybe intersections, stuff like that. Is that right?
Yeah, no, I've screwed that up where I either thought the driver knew the area better or I thought I told them. I guess I gave a better description of what turns were coming up. I thought I gave them a better description. I didn't, and they missed a turn or something. What I realized is I need to at at the turns I should be looking up. Even with an experienced driver, I should be at minimum every time we're going to make a turn, look up and make sure, help them out because we all make mistakes. Help them out and make sure we make the right turn and pay attention to exactly what the driver's doing, not just get sucked into the map and think about what we're going to do when we get there. Cause it really doesn't matter if we don't get there, what we're going to do.
That's true.
Um,
So what do you do if you don't have what if it's really close? Talking one turn out of your firehouse or the complex across the street or right down the road. What do you do then when you don't have a lot of time to prep the driver?
yeah, this can be hard because you want to jump in and you want to go, and you don't want to be holding up the crew from getting there, getting their fire, doing what we need to do. And but sometimes, man, if it's close, you're not going to have time to look stuff up. So someone told me this like years ago, an officer like, hey, if you aren't sure, just pull out on the ramp and stop. Tell them to stop and sit on the ramp. Figure it out from there. You're outside the firehouse, everyone's ready to go. You're sitting there, but just take that extra time. It's going to be worth it. And sure enough, when I was assigned to a different firehouse, we had something, and I think it was it was like the end of the block we were in, and we jumped in, went down the block, and by the time I realized where it was, we were boom into the next block, and it was like, oh man. So I didn't heed that advice. What I should have done is, even though it does not feel right when you just pull out and you sit there and you're trying to figure it out, but that can help you so much. It's worth taking that little extra time. And I think that's a bigger lesson beyond just this, as time goes on in the job and you realize that just pausing for a second, taking a little time to do a little extra size up, assess the situation, decide on a course of action. It feels like forever, but a lot of times you're talking 5 seconds or less. Those 5 seconds to just take a second, figure out exactly where I am or what I need to do, or how do I need to coordinate what happens next. Gosh, man, that can help so much. It's silly how powerful that can be and how important as an officer to just sometimes take these brief pauses to just assess what you're doing. You can get so sucked into a course of action or a tactic that you're missing the bigger picture. So that, just going out on the ramp, stopping and figuring out, okay, that's what I need to do. That's the hydrant I need to take, or that's how we need to position the ladder truck, or whatever it may be. Man, it can be so valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can happen, right on the ramp. And I think, if you do that and you kind of get on the same page real quick, like you said, if it feels like forever, but it's probably just a couple of seconds. And then, we talk about bandwidth, mental bandwidth. It kind of opens up a little bit of bandwidth for you to make further decisions past that. And that can happen too, pulling up to the scene too, right? Where sometimes especially in our area, there's a lot of units arriving all at once, and some pieces kind of have to come into play, especially with water supply and things like that. So, the first engine is sometimes the second engine is arriving almost simultaneously with the first engine. And, there's water supplies being called out, but things can change. We were talking about a call we had a couple of weeks ago where the water supply was a little funny, and we kind of had to let the first engine figure out where they were going to end up so we could figure out what the water supply was actually going to look like. And I remember you said, just kind of slow up a little bit, let the first engine figure out where they're going, what they're doing, and then we're going to figure out what we're doing based on that. And I think that can be helpful too. And again, in the heat of the moment, it feels like an eternity, but to let the pieces fall into place and to take their course of action, it ends up um, alleviating a lot of problems that could otherwise happen if everybody just kind of went after it all in a big chaotic mess.
Yeah, I mean, the call you brought up, I think that there's a good lesson to all that too, is to pass on is, it's one of those where we were dispatched to it was a fire in a laundromat. And what we didn't know at the time is it it's one of these areas where it's kind of a toss up. We may end up first due,
Mhm.
maybe, if we get a good start, or the other company may end up first on scene. What we didn't know is that the other company was dispatched for an outside fire originally to that address.
Right. So they were
And en
already.
route,
Mhm.
it upgraded to a fire.
Mhm.
And, the guy was honest in the hot wash and said he hadn't looked at a hydrant. So that's one of those things, like, once you make that mistake, I made it myself. Like, once you make that mistake and you realize, it's like, I should have looked up a hydrant. You're hopefully never going to do that again. So if you're going to an outside fire or something you don't think where you're going to need the hydrant, just look up the closest hydrant. I mean, it's like fire alarms and everything else. And I try and do that all the time with you. I say, hey, if this is a fire, this is your hydrant. This
Mhm.
is where your water supply is. Maybe you have to reposition because we're by ourselves at first. But anyway, so he, I guess, was scrambling now, trying to figure out what he was going to do with his water supply. And we were going towards the direction he was coming from, and he was driving on the same road, at us. So it's kind of like we were going to cross paths. And originally, I think he just got flustered and he called out hydrant, and he basically, I'm trying to remember, what was it? He wanted to involve, it was like 3 engines or
Yeah.
something. Like, what was something weird about it? It was, oh, I know what it was. So they decided they were gonna stop in front of the address.
Mhm.
He called
Right.
out a hydrant that was in the direction we were coming from. He wanted us to lay out from that hydrant and then stop next to him. Then I was gonna have to call the 3rd engine to pick up our water supply. And I was like, dude, this is
This
this is not
messy.
not gonna make sense. So that's why, going down the road, I said to you, I was like, I think I said, we're not gonna do
We're not
that.
doing that.
So I let it play out. He called the hydrant, and then what we did is, it's a big enough road where I knew we could hit a U-turn, drop a line from him, and reverse lay to the hydrant, and we were going to be good to go. And then it's not sucking another engine into our situation, and it really didn't matter. He called the hydrant out, and that was the other thing. As time has gone on, I've realized that if I can minimize switching stuff up, it helps everything else. Because there was a hydrant also on the other side. We could have laid out, dropped the line, reverse laid, and gone the other way. But he had already called that hydrant out. So let's just keep that hydrant. We can make it work. And then I don't have to disrupt secondary water and all this other stuff. So if you can minimize, even if you have to make a change, if you can still stay with the same hydrant, even if you're doing a different layout, reverse lay, forward lay, whatever, split, it it's gonna keep things a little more calm. It's gonna work a little better. So yeah, no, that was a good one to, you know, learn from, make adjustments from. So I mean, another one here worth talking about is, as far as if the person doesn't have, I guess, if you don't know exactly how to get there, right? The address comes out and it's like, it's this address. I really don't know where that address is. That's always fun, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I got nothing. Um, at the very least, if you know maybe the area, so say it's from this, it's near company, 12, it's near their area. What you can do, again, this is something, older guy passed on to me. He said, if you don't know, start driving towards their firehouse.
Mhm.
So that most of the time, that's going to get you at least in the right direction. I mean, sometimes there's things where maybe I take the highway, maybe I take this road. There's only so much you can do. You got to pick one. But if you're going in the direction of that, that firehouse, if it's in their area where it came out, you're going to get going at the very least, and that's going to buy you some time so you can start heading in that direction and then start trying to look it up and figure out exactly, how you want to give directions from there. But that was something passed on to me years ago, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. It's
Yeah.
really helpful.
That was kind of the benefit of the box system, which
Yeah,
of
some
course
people still use it.
yeah, it's still in place. I feel like with all of the technology and stuff, we've sort of got away from that, especially with the younger drivers. But it used to be you'd know the boxes, which was
Yeah.
kind of big, groups of areas, which was pretty convenient because you could say, head towards 58, 54, and that you may not know exactly which building you're going to, but you could get a general direction. But we can still kind of use that same, mechanism of, go in this direction. You know where that is? Yeah, go that way. You know where the hospital is? Yeah, go towards
Yeah.
that.
Or go towards, hey, we're going to take the highway. So
Yeah.
start going
Go
towards
that
the
way.
highway. We got to get on the highway,
Mhm.
or we got to get on this major road, like head towards how we can get to that major road. I mean, stuff like that. Again, the landmarks, whatever, if there's like
Mhm.
some kind of major, I don't know, industrial area or something that just send them in a direction. I'll say, hey, head in that direction. I'll get you there. Let me
Yeah.
just look it up.
And that buys you a little bit of time to.
Yeah, because it's not so close that, you're sitting on the ramp a lot of times because it's so close, you can't afford to make a wrong turn. But this is the opposite, where it's farther away. You may not know, and you can't afford to sit on the ramp and lose time.
Right.
So you can head in that direction and then figure it out. And maybe you're a little off on your directions, but it's better than just sitting there trying to figure it out, because you have the time to correct as you're traveling. So.
And speaking of landmarks, this is kind of one of the things you can develop if you work with a driver for a while, which is what I like to call shorthand, right? We have, there's probably ones that we have that we can't even think of off the top of our head, but we have a few examples are like, we have the cop hydrant.
We should tell the story behind that too.
Yeah.
How that happened.
Do you want to tell that story? Yeah, go ahead.
So it was, I think it was like close to change of shift in the morning or something. The call comes out, and I'm looking up the address, and then I'm looking up the closest hydrant and everything else. And I'm like, okay, all right. I was fairly new too. I think I'd only been less than a year at the firehouse. So I still was kind of, like, okay, I know. I was relying a lot more on the maps than I was on a memory or really truly knowing the area. And I was like, okay, all right, this is the hydrant. It's going to be right here. It's going to be my side over here. It's going to pass the entrance.
Did it all right.
Yeah, past the entrance to the, the complex. It's right there. And we're coming up, and I can't remember exactly, but we had a conversation of, I think you said, like, I don't see it. And I was like, I don't see it. And we're like going back and forth.
Like, I know it's there.
No, it's there. And then sure enough, there was a police car sitting there on the side of the road that got dispatched to the fire, and it's just sitting there on the side of the road. And I'm like, where's the hydrant? Did they move it? Like, it has to be right here. And then sure enough, it's the cop is sitting on the hydrant.
Yep.
And it's blocking it. So, man, I felt it. That is the most uncomfortable feeling when you're like, the hydrant's right here. I'm checking the map. I'm like, did I screw up? And the cop's sitting on it, blocking it. So we start calling it the cop hydrant.
Yeah.
And then whenever we have a box in that area and we're going to use that hydrant, we're like, hey man, we're going to take the cop hydrant. I should say that on the radio. I think that would be funny, but no one else would know. But for you and I, yeah.
Yeah. And then we also have the rat hydrant.
Yeah. Explain that one.
Yeah. So the rat hydrant is this hydrant that's near like a little dumpster depot, I guess. And the rats around it are unbelievable, and they're just, you can hear them. So like the few times that I've connected to that, you can hear them in the background, these freaking rats, and they come out. And I remember one time you had I was off or something. You had another driver.
I think I was actually working overtime.
Overtime,
on
okay.
a different shift. Yeah.
Yeah, and you had a driver, and you said, okay, you're gonna hook up to the rat hydrant. I mean, of course, he didn't know what that was.
Well,
but
because he wasn't as familiar with the area. He was somewhat newer there, and so I had to explain where the hydrant
where it was.
I was like, hey, it's gonna be in the parking lot. It's gonna be here.
So watch out for the rats.
Yes, I said, hey man, I was like, there's a bunch of rats all around there. I'm just telling you.
And he didn't believe you.
And he kind of laughed,
Yeah.
and he didn't believe me. So we go inside, start doing what we're gonna do. We come back out, and he's like, I almost screamed, man. You were right. There were rats coming out of everywhere. And I mean, these are big rats, like almost cat-sized rats, all over the place. And they had like a little, I don't know, underground nest. They're coming out. And I was like, I told you, dude. I warned you.
Yeah.
He's like, I thought you were just kidding. I was like, no, man. There's a reason we call it the rat hydrant.
But we know the rat hydrant. We know that if you say rat hydrant, there is zero confusion. Mm-hmm. We have a bunch of them, and in that same complex, there's one that's like the hydrant that's in the middle, right at the split.
Yeah.
And so you develop this shorthand, and obviously it takes experience working together. You have these experiences. We got the cop hydrant, we got the rat hydrant, we got the the one in the middle, but that really reduces the need for communication. Because when you say, let's say the rat hydrant, for instance, not only do I know what hydrant I'm taking, we have immediately gotten on the same page that we're going to the right complex because I know where that is. I know roughly where the building is going to be because that hydrant services, a certain amount of buildings and stuff. So when you develop that shorthand between the driver and the officer, you can communicate really two or three, maybe four pieces of information with one sentence.
Yeah, the split, like, you were just saying is another good one. You come into a parking lot and you say, "Hey, as we go in, the parking lot's gonna split. It's gonna be right there. The hydrant's gonna be on the island at the split." Like, that's another helpful term. It's gonna be on the island, like these little grass islands in parking lots can help, stuff like that. I mean, the thing is sometimes what can be really hard is communicating stuff you haven't seen before
Mm,
or is kind of confusing. It's not sitting. I mean, if it's around an address, obviously you can tie the hydrant to an address. If it's at an intersection, you can tie it to an intersection. That works well. Even if it sits a few feet off the intersection, it's close enough people are going to see it. Side of a building, you can say it's on the Bravo side or the Delta side or by a corner. I mean, we can say that, but sometimes what can get hard is it's not really anywhere.
yeah.
It's past the building. I mean, we have some stuff like that where, hey, the hydrant's gonna be, I don't know, it's gonna be past the building, on the Bravo side, maybe like 200 feet. You're gonna have to reverse lay from us. That may be the best you can do. I mean, if everyone has the same map for the most part, they can figure that out. They can see that. The last thing I'll say is practice. And you're like, well, how do I practice? Listen to the radio. I've said this before. If you have some kind of app or something where you get alerts on your phone or something about the what's coming out or something, and you have that on your phone where you can see hydrants and stuff like that before they give their water supply statement or positioning statement, whatever it may be. Practice, like, what would you say, and then listen to what they say, and you may pick up something from them that you're like, I never heard anyone say it that way. Man, that makes a lot of sense. All right, I'm going to use that. And then write it down. Don't just listen to it. Like, I'll have a notebook, I'll write it down and capture it and then look back at it sometimes. If you're at the firehouse and you hear a box go out or gas leak or whatever, practice. How would I say that before you hear someone else say it? What's nice about that is if you in your head are thinking about how you're going to say it, then you hear someone else say it, good or bad. But if it's good, then you're okay. All right, that's how they said it. Especially if it was better than what you would have said. It's nice. And I mean, also use every call. I mean, if you go, your EMS calls, your public service, uh, all that kind of stuff. Use all those calls to think about. And we jokingly do it sometimes where we'll say, all right, so if this is on fire, and then we're going for the water leak, but if this is on fire, when we get there, we're going to take this hydrant,
Hmm.
you're going to do this, just the talking about that can be helpful. It's a little joke. It's fun, to kind
Yeah,
of break
actually, I
things
used
up.
to think that was, people talk about using EMS calls for getting reps for, mental reps or whatever. I used to think that was stupid, but actually, I realized when you're on the way to a public service or water leak or EMS call or something, the stakes are sort of low, so you can actually kind of just experiment with it a little bit. Try some language, whatever, and kind of lock in. If nothing else, it's just a rep, and I actually really enjoy that now. Like you said, we kind of do it as a joke. Like, all right, if this is a ripper, this is
It's a
this is your
ripper.
hydrant. This is what you're gonna do, and it's just practice, with low
Mhm.
stakes, and that actually it's actually I've found it to be pretty helpful. So, um, one last question I wanted to ask you when we're talking about cab communication, we've talked a lot about the communication between driver and officer. um, there's there's so much going on for the officer. You're trying to figure things out and also trying to communicate that. It almost seems like a little bit to me that getting in a good habit of communicating this stuff is also a good way of kind of locking it in for yourself too. So You kind of figuring things out loud and communicating them. Um, what about where in the mix, do we talk to the guys in the back? Do you have any tips on that about, communicating your expectations once we get off the rig? Does that happen going down the road? Does that happen when you get on scene? When do we bring them into it? Talk about where the building is for them and make sure that they're clear on that. What kind of call it is, what kind of equipment we need, what line needs to be pulled, anything like that. Can you talk about, just kind of wrap it up with talking to the guys in the back?
Yeah, I mean, I prioritize that. Like, so my first priority is making sure we get there. So before I even really start thinking about that, I'm thinking about, okay, how do we get there? Getting the directions, making sure if I'm on an engine, the water supply, or if I'm on the truck, where I want to position, where are the engines going to get their water supply, how that's going to affect me. So that's first. Like, so because if I can't get that right, I can't get anything right. So I think about that first. As soon as I get that done in my head, figure that out, and I'll usually, if I have to call it out on the radio, I'll say that. If we're, like a second due, or we're going to be on the hydrant or something like that, they're laying out from, I'll usually even tell you what I think it's going to be. He's going to probably use this hydrant. They're going to take their own water. They're going to do, so get that out there. It's like, okay, that's what they do. It's confirmed. All right, boom. Then I move to the next thing. Then I start thinking about the building or the situation more so, like what line we're going to use. And, I can't be 100% about that, because sometimes it's just stuff looks a little different. Like you look on a map or something and you're like, it's not exactly what I thought. So I'll usually say, hey, it looks like we're going to pull the 300 if we get there, depending on how we position, and I'll have usually in my own head a backup plan. I'm like, it may be if we're close, maybe it's the 200, or further away, 400, or some other way of getting order, whatever line we're going to pull, whatever we're going to do. But that's usually when I get it out. I'll just say, hey, it's going to be this. If I can give them any other information, if it's not clear of the radio, it's the second floor, it's going to be towards the back, or whatever that is. That's usually when I say that, get that out of the way. Then I go back to making sure we're getting there and getting on scene. So that's my flow. Like, make sure we can get there, get all that stuff out of the way. Make sure we, talk about what we're going to do there, what we, line we're going to pull, or where the priority is for ladders or forcible entry, whatever that may be. And then back to making sure we end up in the right place. For me, that's usually just how I go. 1, 2, 3.
Good flow. Yeah. And it just made me think too, you're saying that is, if you're a driver or in the back, listening to the official radio communications can be useful too, because
Yeah.
I don't need to make you say things twice. If you just called out a water supply, to the second engine or whatever, and I hear that, okay, I heard, you don't have to tell me again. I heard you say it on the radio, and the guys on the back should be listening to, okay, I heard him say this is what we're doing, whatever. You can gather information both from radio communication and cab communication, which is what we're talking about here.
Yeah. And I have one last question.
All right.
I want someone, whatever, comment, tell me if this happens to you, because I do not, it blows my mind. Why is it when we run a CPR, there's like 20 cops that show up just immediately, sometimes before we even get there. But when it's an assault, I know, it takes forever. We sit there forever. We just did that the other day. We're sitting there, it was, situation. It was really a police situation. And we're like, all right, we're staging. Like, well, what, should we say it's like a CPR and you guys will all show up
That's
and
what
trick you?
We're like, yeah, let's just code it as a CPR.
Yeah, it's a CPR. Tricked you, but man, it's wild. Anyway, I don't know. It's just a weird thing. I need to know if this is a bigger problem than, just us. But anyway.
There's a lot I don't understand about cops.
Yeah, well, my whole family is, aside from me,
right,
are cops like up north. So
yeah, maybe we'll get into that one day. You got some good stories from
the outlier
from that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's cab communication episode.
Yeah. Thanks for your service.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for stopping by. Check us out at firegroundcompany.com You'll find links to all our social media accounts and our YouTube channel, and you'll stay up to date on everything we're working on. We also have a store on our website where you can support us as we grow this community, plus working on some great courses to help you strengthen your leadership in the fire department and support its traditions and culture. Last but not least, subscribe to the podcast, give us a rating, leave a comment, spread the word, get this out to the firefighters who are hungry to make the job even better. All right, on that note, here, I got this. If you could only watch one Rocky movie for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
Easy, Rocky 4.
Really?
No
Rocky 4.
question. Yep.
Okay, I see that. Why?
The training montage, and it's kind of obvious, but the way they like pit the science and the steroids.
Yeah. Even though Stallone was juicing at the time.
Exactly. I mean, not according to that movie. He was,
he was
training with logs. That's what did it.
Yeah, that's always jacked.
And he's doing the pull-ups in the barn.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
All right. What do you think my favorite is?
Probably 3.
Wrong.
No, not Mr. T.
I enjoy that one a lot. It's fun, but if you said to me I could only watch one the rest of my life, if that's the bar, it would be 2 actually.
2.
So the reason I love 2 is I love 4 a lot. I love 4 a lot. I love all of them but 5. I mean, 5 is trash.
It's awful.
5 is trash. Stallone even said that, and that's why he did the 6th one, which he called Rocky Balboa, which was good. That was a good one. I really enjoyed that. I was surprised he pulled that off because of the age thing, but he did it, man. It worked well. But 2, there's so much stuff there, and I just think it's really interesting because it just, he lost the first fight. Spoiler alert. He lost the first fight, so he comes back and he's not going to fight anymore. So then there's this whole thing with, is he going to fight again? How is he going to make money? Everything else. So he's trying to make money in other ways and get other jobs, and he has a poor education. Also, so he's this whole struggle of like this family life struggle and stuff, which I was like, it's kind of, it's interesting to me. And then, the Apollo thing. You get deep down into his character where he now almost lost. So that's nagging him. He's getting like hate mail and everything else. That's a whole thing going on. And he's trying to draw Rocky into another fight and kind of humiliate him. And, his trainer doesn't want him to train anymore or train or fight anymore because he's going to get hurt. So his wife doesn't want him to do it for the same reason. All these things. He's having a kid. His wife goes into a coma. He's it's like, man, one thing after another. And he's like overcoming it towards the end, of course, and he wins, and the fight is epic. They both fall down, and the first one to get up wins. If no one gets up, Apollo retains the title. So there's so much there. There's one thing, though, that I hate, even though I would watch that movie for the rest of my life if I couldn't watch any others. It's the darn scene with all the kids running, because it's so good, but then that's so silly, man. So he's running through, and then these little kids, these 8-year-olds and stuff, and 12-year-olds start running with him. He's running all through Philadelphia. And then at the very end, he has like 200, 300 kids all around him. I'm like, it would never happen, I get it. It's a movie. Suspend disbelief. No, it's just all my kids, maybe, if I'm lucky, run after me. But
basically
it's a lot.
The Fireground Company Podcast.